Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Corey Loses for our September channel update and patron Q&A. This is technically going to be coming out on, I think, October 3rd. So if, when you're watching this or after it, you would like to get a question in for the October channel update and patron Q&A, there will be a link in the description to the submission page for that. But yeah, so there are a few things I want to talk about with the channel before getting to our questions this month. There are not a huge amount of questions, so it shouldn't be quite as long as the last few have been. First, though, there are a few things that impact this channel, Corey Loses, Corey's Datapad, which is my lore channel, and the Twitch channel a little bit. To talk about this channel first, there is going to be a change that I mentioned in the last single stream Galactic Conquest where we did the Rebel campaign, where I'm planning to do the Friday video slot or Friday stream as another Empire at War or probably Empire at War related stream on YouTube directly. So normally we'll do the recordings for Empire at War series on Twitch, and then I'll post those episodes throughout the week. And we haven't really had any Empire at War streams on YouTube for a long time. So what I'm going to be doing now is do the recordings like usual on Mondays on Twitch, and then on Fridays we will do the we'll do another Empire at War stream of some kind, whether that's a different campaign from the one that's already going on, or something like the community challenge being an entirely streamed thing is probably what's going to take that slot once that's ready. This past Friday, which I'm actually recording this before, we will have done the creation of the Galactic Conquest map for the community challenge. So sometimes it'll be modding streams like that, but the idea will be to get a consistent presence of Empire at War streams on the channel on top of just the videos. So that'll probably mean there are 2 videos and 1 stream from Empire at War coming every week, which I think is a good amount because I do want to make sure that I try to get in some other content, especially because some of that people do seem to be enjoying, like the Mass Effect playthroughs that have been going on for the last few months. Even the Pokemon Unite streams, those both on Twitch are usually getting 20 to 30 viewers for Unite and Mass Effect, which for Twitch, for me, for stuff that's not Empire at War, that's not too terrible. So I've been doing a lot of Twitch streaming recently, so I've been pretty happy with how those have been going. We do have the kind of usual series on YouTube as well. So I want to make sure there's a good mix of videos and streams here. Make sure that we're getting a good mix of games, so it's not like just Empire at War, but it's also not getting rid of Empire at War. Uh, Especially once we get into like the Mandalorian coming back. I'm kind of hoping to have Revan's Revenge be ready to do a Mandalorian playthrough. I think that could get a lot of traction. Uh, but yeah, so on the topic of traction, there have been a lot of kind of algorithmic changes recently that have made it kind of difficult for longer form content, which is typically what I do. And not even like super long form, but like anything more than a couple minutes uh, to really catch on. So this is especially important, not for loses, but for Datapad. So while I have done kind of the meme videos in the past, like I did a couple last year, and I haven't really done many since then. I may still throw some of those in whenever I have an idea I think is funny, but those are really more just like done for their own sake. Whereas on Datapad, I'm going to be playing with this format a little bit more. So if you follow my lore channel, Corey's Datapad, over the last couple days, I've tried to put out some shorts, which are just like short videos that are typically the way YouTube structures them is for phones primarily. But I think for what I do on Datapad, the format actually works. Like I wouldn't just do it to like chase the trend if it didn't actually work with what I was trying to do. But one of the things that has been very difficult for me, honestly, with Datapad is that I just don't have time to put out as much regular content as I need to keep up. And like if you look at channels like Eckhart's Ladder, Star Wars Theory, even Star Wars Explained, uh, a lot of the lore channels, they'll have daily videos, and that's kind of their main channel. Then if they do gaming stuff, it'll be like a sometimes thing, or they'll have a second channel that in a lot of ways is run by someone else, like how Charlie does a lot of the day-to-day on X2, but then Ek will come in for streams and certain videos. Uh, Alex from Star Wars Explained will stream sometimes, pretty rarely. Same thing with Mark from the Template Institute. where he also has like some help on his main channel, but then he does a couple of streams a week. Whereas, like for me, I don't really consider Datapad or Loses the main channel. Loses sometimes takes priority just because it's the first channel and it's the one that's like most reliable, and I get to play video games for it, which is kind of fun. Um, but for Datapad, because I'm not able to do daily videos the same way that I try to do it here, even though I've not been like super daily here, uh, that's really stopped my ability to grow. And in a period where even a lot of those much larger channels are struggling to get views, having that channel grow is very difficult. And when I'm trying to do things like the animations and putting that much time into the videos, uh, then I need to be trying stuff that actually gets traction with it. Luckily, animations I think will work pretty decently with the format, uh, because it's a lot of time put in for a short amount of content. But like with render times and everything, doing animations that are longer than 40 seconds is a big ask. So what I'm kind of going to be doing there is like do an animation of a battle, have that be a video, then probably do another longer video with that animated footage breaking down the battle. Uh, so that's kind of what the plan is there in the short term. I'm going to do regular shorts for lore videos. And then on top of that, every couple of weeks, I'm going to try to do a much longer form video. So have something that I'm picking away at while doing those other forms of videos. An example of that would be I could probably do a 30 to maybe even 45-minute video on all the warlords and stuff and the situation of the Empire after Endor, and like breakdowns of the whole galaxy, include some animated elements in that, and kind of have a mix of like longer, almost faux documentary style with the shorts, because there's a lot of like cool little topics in Star Wars that you can't really stretch out to 10-minute videos. So if you have, I think I by doing a mix of that, I think it'll work. And the videos that I put out, the shorts that I put out over the last couple days, have been some of the most fun videos to work on for that channel in a long time, which is nice as well. Not necessarily an indicator of what's going to succeed, but it does make it a lot easier to have that kind of output when you're working. But it's difficult to have, trying to have like daily videos here, daily videos there, streaming 3 times a week on Twitch, and then also doing all the mod work. So I try to combine that stuff where I can, like turning some of the Twitch streams into videos for here. But I'm trying to make sure I've got enough bases covered, and more importantly, trying to make sure that the bases I have covered, I'm doing well enough. Because I feel like with the amount that I try to do, sometimes the quality of some individual elements of it suffer, and it's really easy to burn out like that. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Since I've been spending so much time in Blender, I'm gonna be hopefully at some point doing a proper like rebrand. I did some of the remade elements of like the stream layout like this, but there's still some elements of this that I'm not happy with. I just pressed play on it because like it's kind of distracting having everything be that visually noisy and the swinging back and forth. So I'm gonna be trying to figure out something that really works for it, for like the logo, for the backgrounds, for all the graphics. And that'll be something that I either have to put a lot of time in myself, or which I might even just like try to contract out or commission out to someone, because there are some really talented artists that I know out there in the community. But like my thing is always that I always want to do everything myself, uh, which maybe it's like a control thing, but it's partially just like I want to. This is the thing I'm doing. I want this to be a reflection of what I want to do, and it's a bit different with like the mods, because obviously there's a lot more people inputting on that, and in there the way I address like what we're gonna do or not do has a lot more of a team element. But this is just like so entwined with me, and I also have an element of like the Empire at War expanded stuff is such a team element that like this is just kind of my thing, uh, and it's, I don't know, it just feels better for me generally when I do that kind of stuff myself. But I'm also not talented enough to do this stuff, so I might have to commission that out. But yeah, so let's get into the questions. That's just a brief rundown and some verbal spouting of nonsense for what I'm looking to do over the next little while. But our first question here, I'm gonna put them on screen for this one. Oh, that's the frame I'm moving. Never mind. All right, there we go. Our first question comes from Hawkeye, who says, "How are you? How are your friends and family?" I'm good. I have not much to complain about right now. Most of my life at this point is just work, so everything that I just spoke about is kind of the, the rundown of what's happening there. On my for like friends, my a lot of my friends are starting to either plan their weddings or have had to already miss their weddings. So some of the friends that I've been friends with since like childhood or uh, either already married now or planning their weddings for like next year. One of the last things I did before COVID, well, it was actually May of like 2019, so it wasn't one of the last things. It was a few months before. Time doesn't mean anything anymore, but like I went to my friend's wedding there, one of my best friends since like grade 3 or grade 1 even. Yeah, it was definitely like grade 1 or before. No, it was even like pre-kindergarten actually that we've been friends since. So we've been friends for almost 25 years. So went to his wedding, and then unfortunately last year we had to miss one of my other best friends since like grade 6, her wedding. So she wasn't able to do any kind of like in person anything, and now her and her husband have moved off to another province. So it'll be a long time before I actually see them in person. But another pair of friends are planning their wedding for next year, and we're hoping that we can do something in person for that. They've got the venue booked, so we're all just assuming that we'll be there for that. But you never know. It's been a while since I've seen any of my family as well. Like my nephews, I saw when they were newborn and 2, and now they're 2 and 4. Uh, so I'm looking forward to being able to see family again, hopefully in the next couple months, depending on everything. But we'll see. Dana just got home from going and visiting her family, so I'm gonna try to make that trip myself soon. But thank you, Hawkeye. The next question comes from Jacob, who says, "Any thoughts on bringing the Strident class Star Defender to Thrawn's Revenge in the future?" That will be happening when we get to Corellia. We've actually shown a concept that Valerie made for it. We haven't made the actual model and texture for it yet. So it's not like super high priority, but it is something that will show up eventually. So thank you, Jacob. Next question comes from Haster, the King in Yellow, who asks, "Will there be more ways added to alter the influence levels on planets in the future? If so, can you share them?" Yep, that is something that will be changing. Like that'll be kind of refined every release and adjusted as stuff gets fleshed out. We generally don't have like the the resource load or the planning framework to get like literally everything laid out ahead of time. Usually, it's something that we think about on a per release basis of like how can we refine the levers we have, especially with influence, which is now something that players I think are very used to. And like as we find out better ways to display information to players, that's something that is always like we introduce something we don't want it to be like too obscure and hard to notice having a huge impact. So once we figure out like better ways to display it, this is a big case with like ship crews, which is going to get a video on that topic pretty soon. But yeah, so one of the main things that is changing for influence in this release is that it plays more of a direct role in the economy. So before you had a hard limit on the tax agencies you could build, and if you've been watching the Pentastar Element playthrough, you can see that influence gets, or rather that when you build a tax facility, that'll drop your influence by a bit. So that's kind of being used as a balancing factor for the economy now. And there will be more stuff added to add or remove influence, doing different stuff with it, generally on a per faction basis as well. So certain factions would get more of a reward for trying to keep influence high, whereas other factions might have more of their gameplay based around doing things that are going to lower influence, using it as almost kind of a spendable resource. But that I can't give too many more specifics on that beyond the tax thing. You'll just have to stay tuned for that. Thank you, Haster. Uh, I'll get to Lars's question last, I think, because the next two from II and Charles are a bit more like content specific rather than like a long term view of it. So I think we'll go to II's first, saying, "Thanks for answering my previous question. No problem. Didn't expect such an in depth answer. I have a small feature question. Is there any plans for more ship refits like PDF dreadnoughts to dreadnought carrier, maybe an ISD's ones with octuple turbolasers?" Uh, so not quite like that. There are a few things that are meant to represent like specific ship changes, but we don't plan to make a bunch of ships like too customizable individually or huge class changes, because like usually we skip out on doing per unit upgrades. We have a few exceptions to that, like the dreadnoughts, but usually the scale of the mod doesn't work out super great with it. And the more buildable stuff you have like that, the more AI calculations happen, and that's a big cause of lag. That's why Phoenix Rising, for example, is on the laggier side. So there's a consideration there to worry about. But we also try to define the faction playstyles a lot more, and like a lot more than we used to. And having too many variations on the same unit can mean that you start filling in what are supposed to be gaps in what the faction's able to do and make the units bleed into each other a bit more. Because we're trying really hard to make sure that every unit feels different, every faction feels different. So if we start having like too much customization, what initially starts off as having like defined roles for everything turns into a lot of fuzziness, allowing you to uh, have too many bases covered per faction. And like customization is great, so whatever we can put in reasonable customization that doesn't hurt the basic gameplay flow, that's something we try to do. But on a per unit basis like that, or on a per class basis like that, trying to throw in too much modification ultimately just ends up being a bit of bloat on the lag side and on the playstyle side. So thank you, II. Our next question comes from Charles, who asks, will late era Imperial units like the Turbulent class and specific New Republic retrofitted Star Destroyers like the Anakin Solo be released as they get finished, or does the team specifically want to get more Vaughn content done before getting into Legacy of the Force here era? So we're not necessarily content locking uh, things like that. There, a lot of progression will be somewhat more internal to factions rather than necessarily being like, okay, you have to be in the Vong War before you get certain things for the New Republic or whatever. Like the Krellian Confederacy will be something that can arise pre Vong War as well. So generally, it's when it's done, but we're also prioritizing the work based on era a little bit. So that's how you get stuff like the mediator, which we've put out already, but it's typically not something we'd put as like a high priority thing to work on beforehand. So yeah, like turbulent, you probably wouldn't see until we're specifically focusing on that. The Anakin Solo, like the get if we're still going to call that the ISD-4 or not, because we didn't call the Mon Mothma type the ISD-3, which I think was our original plan, but you'll be more likely to see elements like that come out uh, when that faction gets attention. Because like there's going to be I've basically forbid anyone from working too much on the New Republic this release because they've had so much focus over the last little while, and there's a tendency for them to just get all the focus and distract from stuff we could be doing for other factions. But like next release, we're going to have a bit more focus on the New Republic's roster split up and how their government stuff works and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we put in the Anakin Solo in some way as a research in that as well, because it's something where we have the assets for that even. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to wait for that period to be covered directly, but that's usually how the priority gets broken up. So it's not like a principled stance on not doing stuff. It's just usually how it works out. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you, Charles. And finally, we're getting to Lars's question, which is, what are some long-term plans of you and your mod team? Uh, it's difficult to answer that beyond the kind of like faction overviews and that kind of stuff that we've done. Uh, we're approaching the point in Fall of the Republic in particular where the Republican CIS factions are approaching more of like a maintenance mode rather than like needing to flesh everything out. So that mod can start having more done on like the building side or adding the huts. And there's still some units that obviously we need to do, but it's more like specific case stuff like the Sabaoth Squadron and the Umbaran stuff. Uh, so with Fall of the Republic, there will come a time when it's more that we are working on just changes to that mod will be the more systemic changes and fleshing out stuff with extra units that come in through story events or making the story events themselves, which does open up a bit more of our resource load for other stuff. We've already been working on Thrawn's Revenge for 16 years. uh, or 15 years, nearly 16 years. So it's hard to think of like a time when we won't have stuff to do in it, or like what life could look like when it's done, or what done even means. There are obviously parts of the team that we've spoken about before where like we've talked about potentially doing a game, but that really shifts a lot of uh how stuff has to work, because it probably have to be like an actual commercial venture, which really changes every dynamic. It's not something that all of us want to do. So it's probably not something that we're going to get to as like a direct team venture. But it might be something that I end up doing more on my own, and then trying to like hire in whoever wants to do it whenever it's feasible to, or contract them in for specific stuff. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of just a see how things go situation, especially right now when we're still getting Revenge and Imperial Reign off the ground, and there's still so much to do for Thrawn's Revenge. Like, Fall of the Republic is the only one of the four that's approaching a point right now where you could reasonably say it's, uh, if we stopped, it would be like a complete product as far as what's been promised almost. But even then, there's just so much to do. Because like it's not something that I think any of us see ourselves doing forever. But at the same time, if you would have asked me at any point in the last 15 years, like, is this something you still see yourself doing 2 years from now? A lot of the time, I would have said no, and it's only after I started the channel, where like my job has been working from home, being able to do some of these things is streaming, and like obviously it's not like directly tied into Thrawn's Revenge or Empire War Expanded, but it synergizes really well with it. So it's not something that's like distracting from the rest of my life, from my career or my family, maybe from my family a bit. But yeah, like I am there's always part of me that wants to do like more, and it's something that I have to really shove down inside myself and let try to stick with whatever's reasonable, because like as much as I'm joking about like us doing a Mass Effect mod, there's like at least 35% of me that would really want to do a Mass Effect mod for Empire at War, because I just enjoy those games so much right now. But we're also doing four other mods already, five if you include Sins, which is on a little bit of a hiatus, and then any other Star Wars stuff we'd ever want to do. Because like stopping myself from trying to make like a ship pack with Stellaris, or uh, a bigger project with Stellaris, or doing too much with Ascendancy all at once, or like doing a Mass Effect mod for Empire War. I need to use that self restraint to maybe not start more things that I don't have time for. But I know that was a bit more of a rambling answer. Hopefully, it included some elements of an answer to the question you were asking, Lars. But thank you for the question. Thank you for the questions, everyone. Hawkeye, Jacob, Haster, Lars, II, and Charles. Again, for anyone who wants to get in questions for the October video, those can be placed in the thread linked in the description. So thank you all for watching. Thank you so much for the support throughout the year so far. Hope you're looking forward to the content coming for the rest of the year. We have a bunch of Empire War stuff that's about to start, and I'm going to figure out what's going to happen after Mass Effect, because we're getting to the end of Mass Effect 3, and like, I don't know, do we just do more Divinity Tour? Who knows? But either way, thanks again, everyone. Have a good day.